Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris. Today we're reviewing my most anticipated movie of this summer from who is perhaps my favorite director of all time, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. One of the greatest directors working today, Oppenheimer is a tremendous film that was half of Barbenheimer that dominated the summer 3 years ago. I think for most people, definitely for me, whatever Nolan wanted to do next after Oppenheimer, I would be down for based on his name alone. He could do whatever he wanted after that masterpiece, and of course all his past work that is so beloved and shows an insane amount of talent, creativity, and consistency. This guy brings it all to his projects, and with all his freedom, it was announced he would be adapting Homer's Greek epic, The Odyssey. I remember a few years ago when there were all the rumors around what his next film would be. There was like the helicopter pilot thing. I think a horror movie was thrown out there, which I still think would be awesome for Nolan to tackle. But it's The Odyssey, and that was one that I didn't recall seeing a lot of the rumors for, so when it was announced it was a bit surprising, but I was very interested in seeing Nolan take on this massive epic. I knew a little bit about the story reading some of it in high school, but it's been a while, and I'll avoid spoilers for this review just in case you don't know too much of the story and want to watch the film that way. But let's get right into it. Directed by Christopher Nolan, The Odyssey is a mythical action epic that adapts Homer's foundational saga. One of the big stories following this film when it was announced was the cast, and how over the months with the names they announced, this cast became absolutely stacked. Let's start with the cast on this one. You got Matt Damon as Odysseus, the hero from the war returning home. I thought Damon was a great choice for this role. With a soldier character like Odysseus, you need someone that can bring a strength and sense of leadership that would have commanded so many in this war, and that would be a ruler of this kingdom back home. But there's also a lot explored with this character that I honestly forgot a little bit from this story. Some more depth that requires this character to have a sense of vulnerability and reflection as well. There's themes of honor, values, the ends justifying the means, and consequences, what the war has done to Odysseus and how that is affecting him on his journey afterwards, the multiple dimensions to this character that also works into a larger script that handles these ideas in fascinating ways that made the character a tremendous lead to follow here, and I think Matt Damon brought the necessary complexity to make it work. Then you have Anne Hathaway as Queen Penelope. She was one of the best performances for me of the film. There would definitely be long stretches of the film where it would get away from her side of the story in Ithaca, but her character and her role in this story was really compelling. She's facing all these suitors trying to marry her, as there is doubt over if Odysseus is alive and coming home. And similar to Odysseus, this character has a lot to her that Hathaway brings to life fantastically. She's someone who is facing not just her husband being gone and away from home for so long, but also the doubt and worry and waiting, constantly hoping, but facing the fear of where he could be. And she brings the anguish over this. There's some flashback scenes with her and Odysseus that sells you on this bond they share. She also is very tough as a leader in Ithaca that is fighting off these suitors, trying to determine what to do next, but not being pushed around and trying to stay true to what she believes to be best. Again, there's points where the character disappears for a while, but her role in the story and where it eventually goes is excellent. Speaking of the suitors, we get Robert Pattinson as Antinous, the main villain in Ithaca, the worst of the suitors. Pattinson has been on such a roll lately. He's tremendous here. He's such a nasty guy that is so entitled, manipulative, saying whatever he needs to say to get more power and what he feels like belongs to him. There's scenes here where Pattinson is showing the evil and disgusting nature of the character, the way he talks down to people and the tone in his voice. The characterization and performance are just what they needed to be, one of Nolan's most despicable villains. Then we have the start of a busy July for Tom Holland. We get him back as Spider-Man in 2 weeks. Here, he's not the strongest performance of the film, but he's still great. I will say his character's storyline and his sort of quest he's on for much of the film felt a little underdeveloped and went long stretches without going back to it. I think it serves a purpose in the story that eventually adds some dimension and context to the story, but it lost me a little bit every time they went back there. Probably the weakest aspect of the film for me. The character has a compelling relationship with the story, though, as Odysseus' son that wants to meet his father, believes he's still out there, and wants to step up to protect his home from the suitors and those seeking power for nefarious reasons. Where it goes with him later in the film gets really awesome, so not the greatest performance or storyline for much of the film, but he ends up working in really well. The whole cast is stacked. Charlize Theron, Elliot Page, John Bernthal, John Leguizamo, Benny Safdie, Lupita Nyong'o, Zendaya, Mia Goth, and more. There's some characters that have a significantly smaller role than others, some have very limited roles, so there's a few names that if you were really excited to see them, you might be a little disappointed, but I would say the cast lived up to the hype. When it comes to this story, there were a lot of expectations and a lot of promise going into it of Christopher Nolan adapting what is considered foundational mythology and some of the most classic epics of all time with the Iliad and the Odyssey. These massive journeys with so much thematic depth and trials, and Nolan being the master filmmaker he is, seemed like the perfect fit to bring the story to the big screen with this position he is in, having so much creative freedom, and with his masterful work he's shown with IMAX cameras. This movie is shot entirely with IMAX cameras. I'm seeing it in IMAX this weekend actually for my second viewing, which I am so excited for, because this movie needs to be seen on the best screen you have access to. Just talking about the world and production of this film, the sets and scale of it is huge. Every place you go, all these islands, Troy, Ithaca, different caves, everything feels so tangible and detailed. There's this aesthetic and mix of elegance and gritty warfare that you kind of associate with Greek mythology, and the production design, everything down to the costumes and sets, brings this tremendously. Each location has some beauty to it. There's green forestry, sandy beaches, the stone and architecture of these places, but they are also places where you never feel fully at ease, never feel safe. You always feel like someone or something is out to get you. Knowing some of the story and some of the trials Odysseus goes through here, there were a few I was anticipating that did not disappoint, but also some I wasn't as familiar with that led to some truly shocking moments for me. This is some of Nolan's darkest and most horrifying work at points. There's some body horror here, some pretty gnarly violence, some imagery and things that happen to these characters that bring the danger and brutality of this world. And all this is happening on these sets with practical filmmaking and so much care and detail and everything that brings the immersion you would want from both an adaptation of this myth that does take place in this world and faraway time period, and of course the captivating theater experience of watching a film by Christopher Nolan. When it comes to these trials, there's some action here with the swords, bows and arrows, the different sorts of creatures and types of beings encountered on this journey that continue to be threatening, continue to throw you off and toy with the characters in awful ways. The direction of each of these sequences and Nolan's commitment to making them as raw and massive as possible, again brings you on this journey through this dangerous world where every man that dies, every setback and threat feels monstrous. Another element of these sequences I want to mention is the boat work. The sequences where the sea is against the men and they're in the wooden ships and sailing these violent waves. It's so visceral and brutal. You feel every shake of the boat, every plank of wood getting destroyed, the water filling the ship and the men's lungs. These sailing sequences went such a long way to making you feel along the ride with these men as well. Adding to the emotions and epicness, Ludwig Göransson's score brings all the emotions you need, and that's an equally important part of making you feel the scale of this world, but also the quieter moments making you feel the connection with the characters. Another brilliant score from him. Hoyt van Hoytema's cinematography is also stunning. Every shot is gorgeous. The lighting and use of colors, some of these shadowy shots, but also these grand sequences in the water, in these caves and islands. The mood of every scene brings all these elements together to make this world of this Greek myth so vivid. I also want to talk about the incredible script here. The dialogue is so sharp. There's some incredible lines here that say so much about the conflict and also build some of the themes. The thematic stuff adds so much here, but without spoiling too much, I'll just say it really makes you think about all Odysseus has done and these customs the film establishes for this world, what role the gods play in people's lives. And it again brings a sense of reflection and tragedy to Odysseus that leads to some powerful moments, especially in the third act. And in many ways, in terms of action, in terms of characters, in terms of score and visuals, and in terms of just wrapping things up in a satisfying way, I would say it's one of Nolan's best finales to one of his films. The finale to the Odyssey is actually the part of the story I remembered most, but Nolan still found ways to make it surprising for me, and you feel like this is what it was all building to with its themes and characters. Every resolution feels spot on and appropriate, and the ending hits so hard. Overall, this is another amazing film from Christopher Nolan, bringing this epic myth to life with his sense of size and an outstanding production. The score and cinematography are tremendous, the core cast is full of so much talent, and the same can be said about the supporting roles. So many of the classic trials of the story are brought to life in shocking and often terrifying fashion with Nolan's brilliant filmmaking. There's a subplot or two that drags a little bit and felt a little off whenever they went back to them, but if you were looking forward to this film, the promise of Nolan adapting this story with this cast and all the talent surrounding him, you will not be disappointed. I give Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey a 94 out of 100. That's going to be it for me today on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris. I'll be back on Wednesday with a ranking of all of Christopher Nolan's films so far, but until then, enjoy.